Imagine you were watching a high-stakes championship sporting event. The crowd is absolutely roaring, the clock is ticking down, and every single camera lens in the stadium is zoomed in on the players actively making the play on the field.
Right, where the action is.
Exactly. That is where the action is. But the actual game-winning strategy, the mechanism that determines whether the team ultimately triumphs or collapses, isn't happening on the field at all.
It's on the sidelines.
Right. It is happening on the sidelines. It is what occurs the moment a player comes off the field, takes off their helmet, sits on that bench, and is just immediately surrounded by this hyper-optimized medical operation.
No, absolutely. I mean, we are talking about biometric tracking, targeted cooling protocols, neurological resets. It's a whole science now.
It really is. And today, we're taking that exact concept, the critical importance of the sideline, and applying it to some of the highest stakes environments on the planet, which are emergency response scenes.
Yeah, a total different kind of high stakes.
Very different.
Protecting those who protect us. The Fire Rehab Podcast.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We're exploring a brief but highly focused set of excerpts from a document titled Protecting the Protectors, a Guide to Emergency Scene Rehabilitation.
That's a fantastic text. Very concise.
Super concise. And our mission today is to unpack the profound philosophy that's just packed into a few short sentences about firefighter safety, and to really explore the ethos behind emergency scene rehabilitation.
Yeah, because there is a lot to uncover there.
There really is. Okay, let's unpack this. The entire document frames itself around a single continuous action, which is the need for, quote, advancing emergency scene rehabilitation.
What's fascinating here is that word choice, right? Advancing. It's crucial because it immediately establishes that scene rehabilitation is not a static baseline.
Right, it's not just a set rule book from 1980.
Exactly. It is an evolving science. It is an acknowledgement that whatever the standard of care was a decade ago, or honestly even last year, it simply isn't sufficient for the realities of today.
Which brings me right back to that sports analogy. Because, decades ago, an athlete would take a massive hit, stagger to the sideline, get a splash of water from a communal bucket, and a coach would just tell them to walk it off.
Right, rub some dirt in it.
Exactly. The so-called rehabilitation was basically just an endurance test of their toughness. But now, sports sidelines are literally medical facilities. I assume the fire service has seen, a similar trajectory.
Well, I'd actually challenge the sports analogy there just a bit.
Oh, really? How so?
Because the fundamental difference is predictability. I mean, an athlete has a scheduled game, regulated quarters, a halftime, and an entire off-season to recover.
That's a good point. Firefighters don't exactly get a schedule for emergency.
Exactly. A firefighter can go from a state of deep sleep to maximal physical exertion in under 3 minutes. And, they might do that 4 times in a single night.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the body isn't designed for that.
It's really not. And the environment they're entering is advancing in its lethality, too. The building materials used in modern homes, like synthetics, plastics, lightweight wood trusses, they burn significantly hotter.
Oh, because of all the petroleum-based products we use now.
Precisely. They reach flashover exponentially faster than the legacy materials of the past. And the toxic load in the smoke is incredibly complex.
Where everything is just more dangerous.
Everything. So, when the text emphasizes advancing rehabilitation, it is recognizing a moving target. The threats are escalating, meaning the physiological toll on the responder is escalating, which, dictates that the rehabilitation must advance at the exact same pace just to keep them alive.
So if the fire is advancing, the rehab has to advance.
Yes, exactly.
But what exactly are we rehabilitating? I mean, the text moves from this broad goal of advancing the field into a highly specific blueprint. It states the core mission is to, quote, safeguard the physical health, mental well-being, and operational readiness of those who courageously serve our communities.
That triad right there, physical health, mental well-being, and operational readiness, is the operational core of the entire text.
It's very specific.
It is. And to understand the depth of this document, we have to look at the mechanics of how those 3 elements actually interact on a fire ground.
Let's start with the physical, because that seems the most obvious. You have a human being wearing, what, 50 to 70 pounds of turnout gear?
Roughly, yeah, depending on the setup.
Right. Carrying heavy equipment, operating in an environment that might be several hundred degrees.
Yeah, the physical toll is actually a fascinating feat of human endurance, and it really comes down to thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics. Okay, break that down for me.
So, turnout gear is functionally designed to be an impenetrable barrier. It is meant to block thousands of degrees of external heat from reaching the firefighter's skin.
Which is great, obviously. You want that.
You definitely want that. But the biological consequence of that barrier is that it also completely seals in the body's internal heat.
Right, like wearing a heavy winter coat in a sauna.
Worse, even. When a firefighter is working at maximal exertion, their core temperature skyrockets. Their body attempts to cool itself by sweating, but because the gear is a barrier, that sweat cannot evaporate.
So the body's primary cooling mechanism just completely fails.
It completely fails, yeah.
So they are essentially trapped inside a hyperthermic envelope of their own making.
Precisely. And what happens mechanically when the body cannot cool down?
The heart rate must just go through the roof.
Exactly. The heart has to pump faster and harder to push blood to the surface of the skin in a desperate attempt to shed heat. You are looking at sustained heart rates of 170, 180, sometimes over 190 beats per minute.
Wait, really? Sustained. That's terrifying.
It is. This extreme cardiovascular strain is why sudden cardiac arrest is historically the leading cause of line-of-duty deaths for firefighters.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah. So physical rehabilitation isn't just handing someone a bottle of water because they feel thirsty. It is a targeted, active medical intervention to artificially force their core temperature down and stabilize their cardiovascular system before it fails.
That makes the physical requirement undeniably clear. And, operational readiness naturally follows. You need to know if the machinery of their body is capable of going back to work.
Right. Are they fit to go back in?
Right. But what caught my attention is the explicit inclusion of mental well-being sitting right there in the middle of that triad.
Yeah, that's a crucial detail.
Because the text isn't talking about long-term therapy here. It is listing mental well-being as something that must be safeguarded on the scene, right alongside checking their blood pressure.
What's fascinating here is how the text completely rejects the outdated notion that mental health is just a secondary issue to be dealt with, after the fire is out.
Right, back at the station.
Exactly. It treats the mind and the body as a single operational unit.
I was actually trying to visualize this, and instead of the old cliche of a three-legged stool where if one leg breaks, it all falls down, I started thinking about it like a biological circuit breaker.
A circuit breaker, okay. I like that.
Yeah, because when a firefighter is operating inside a burning structure, they are under an immense physical load, but the cognitive load is equally massive.
Oh, absolutely.
They're navigating zero visibility, making split-second life-or-death calculations, processing extreme sensory input. And if that cognitive load exceeds the system's capacity, the brain literally trips the circuit. It severs the connection to complex decision-making just to protect itself.
The circuit breaker is a highly accurate way to describe the neurobiology of extreme stress.
Really? So that actually tracks biologically?
It does. When you enter a life-threatening environment, the sympathetic nervous system floods the body with adrenaline and cortisol. The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, essentially hijacks the system to ensure immediate survival.
Just pure fight or flight.
Pure fight or flight. The problem is, while the amygdala is great for triggering that response, it actively suppresses the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the logic center, right?
Right. It's the part of the brain responsible for logical reasoning, spatial awareness, complex risk assessment.
Which are the exact cognitive functions a firefighter needs to safely navigate a collapsing building.
Exactly. So picture a responder coming out of a highly traumatic or chaotic scene and entering the rehabilitation area.
Okay.
If you only strip off their gear and lower their core temperature, but you ignore the fact that their nervous system is still locked in an acute stress reaction.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, if their amygdala is still firing and their prefrontal cortex is still suppressed, their circuit breaker is still tripped.
So if you send them back to the fire line in that state, they might be physically cool, but they are operationally compromised.
Highly compromised.
They might miss the subtle signs of a floor feeling spongy, or they might not register a dangerous change in the smoke conditions.
Because their brain simply doesn't have the bandwidth to process those new variables. The text implies that mental well-being isn't a luxury or a soft skill. It is a strict mechanical requirement for doing the job safely.
Wow. So scene rehabilitation has to include cognitive offloading then?
It has to. It requires creating a designated environment that is completely separate from the noise and chaos of the incident.
Somewhere quiet.
Right, allowing the responder's parasympathetic nervous system to engage and tell the brain, you are safe now, you can reset. Only then can you restore true operational readiness.
That drastically elevates the purpose of the rehab sector. I mean, it isn't a break room. It's a physiological and neurological reset point.
That's a great way to put it.
But implementing that level of sophisticated, real-time medical care is incredibly resource-intensive.
Oh, massively.
It requires specialized equipment, trained personnel, designated spaces, and frankly, significant funding.
Right.
Which naturally begs the question, what sustains that massive logistical effort?
Right. Why do we bother?
Exactly. And the text answers this by moving from the mechanics of rehab into the driving philosophy behind it. The authors state, we must strive toward a healthier, stronger future where every firefighter goes home safe.
A very clear goal.
Yes, and then they follow up with this defining line. This mission is built on the simple conviction that those who protect us deserve to be protected in return.
The language is unyielding there. Simple conviction.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because I look at that phrase and I have to ask, is this purely a moral argument?
How do you mean?
Well, is the text just leaning on our sense of civic gratitude? Like saying, hey, they do a difficult job so they ethically deserve this layer of protection. Or is the text actually arguing that this conviction is a practical mandatory requirement for achieving that healthier, stronger future I just mentioned?
So are we looking at a moral plea or a practical mandate?
Exactly. Which one is it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the brilliance of this text is that it doesn't separate the moral from the practical.
They are intertwined.
Completely intertwined. It recognizes that the practical execution of emergency scene rehabilitation is so difficult, so tedious, and so expensive that it will inevitably fail without a foundational moral conviction driving it.
Because it's too easy to just skip it when things get hard.
Exactly. Let's look at the reality of managing an emergency scene. Let's say it is 3:00 a.m., it is freezing rain, and a massive structure fire is taxing every single available resource in a city.
Sounds chaotic.
It is. Setting up a comprehensive rehab sector in those conditions, deploying the medical monitoring equipment, establishing the heating or cooling tents, pulling responders out of the fight when they are desperate to stay in, it's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, I can easily see how a stressed incident commander might look at that logistical nightmare and think, we don't have the time or manpower for this right now. Let's just push through.
And that is exactly what happens if rehab is treated merely as a practical guideline or a bureaucratic checklist.
The system breaks down.
The system will eventually fail. The commitment will waver when budgets get tight at City Hall or when scenes get overly chaotic. People will cut corners.
Because human nature takes the path of least resistance.
Right. So the text argues that the only way to ensure the practical goal, that every firefighter goes home safe, is to anchor it to an unshakable moral absolute.
The conviction.
Yes. The simple conviction that those who protect us deserve to be protected is the necessary fuel for the practical work.
So the moral conviction acts as a guardrail against complacency.
Exactly.
If the entire operational system genuinely believes in that reciprocal social contract, then setting up the rehab sector at 3:00 a.m. in the freezing rain is no longer viewed as a logistical burden.
It is viewed as a non-negotiable obligation.
Right. It creates a continuous loop of safeguarding. Firefighters step into the hazard zone to act as a physical shield between the community and the disaster.
And in return,
The text is demanding that the community and the incident management systems must act as a shield between the firefighter and the cumulative physiological and mental damage of their profession.
that's spot on. You cannot ask someone to absorb that level of trauma and physical destruction on your behalf without offering a dedicated system to repair them in return.
That concept of a continuous loop brings us perfectly to the final piece of this document. Having broken down the necessity of advancing the science of rehab, exploring the mechanical interdependence of the physical, mental, and operational triad, and establishing the profound moral conviction required to sustain it all, we arrive at the text's call to action.
Right, the real-world application.
Exactly. The authors point the reader to a specific hub of information stating, explore more resources at www.fire-rehab.weebly.com.
A great resource, by the way.
Absolutely. But it's the closing remarks that are particularly striking to me. They write, thank you for your dedication to the well-being of those who save others, and keep protecting those that protect us.
It is a deliberate shift in the text's perspective. Well, throughout the document, they are explaining concepts to the reader, but in the closing, they turn around and place the mantle of responsibility directly on the reader.
It is exactly what salespeople call an assumptive close.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the text doesn't say, "We hope you will take an interest in this topic." It explicitly states, "Thank you for your dedication." It speaks to you as if you are already an active, committed participant in this mission.
That's a powerful rhetorical tool.
It is. But why assume that? Why speak to a general reader as if they are already entrenched in the operational logistics of the fire service?
This raises an important question regarding the siloed nature of public safety.
Siloed, meaning we separate it from normal life.
Yeah. When we think about firefighter health and safety, the default assumption for most of society is that it is strictly an internal institutional matter.
Like it's their problem.
Right, we assume the fire chief handles it, or perhaps the union or the municipal safety officer. We view it as their problem to solve within the walls of the firehouse.
We treat it like an incredibly dangerous trade, but ultimately just a trade that manages its own risks.
Right, but this text aggressively dismantles that assumption by thanking the reader for their dedication and explicitly urging them to keep protecting those that protect us. The authors are framing emergency scene rehabilitation not as an insular fire department policy, but as a collective community-wide mandate.
That's a huge shift in mindset.
It is an open invitation, or perhaps a challenge for everyone to take ownership of that reciprocal social contract we just discussed.
So directing the reader to www.fire-rehab.weebly.com isn't just offering a bibliography for further reading.
Not all.
It is presented as the next mechanical step in fulfilling your end of the bargain. If you're going to protect the protectors, you first have to understand the science of what is actually destroying them.
And that knowledge democratizes the responsibility of protection. Think about the ecosystem required to advance this field.
It's not just the people on the front lines.
Exactly. A first responder needs to understand the neurological impacts of the job so they don't hide their mental fatigue on the scene.
Right.
An incident commander needs this knowledge to justify pulling a willing crew out of a burning building to force them to cool down.
Which takes authority and knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a city council member needs to grasp the thermodynamics of turnout gear so they don't veto the budget request for advanced biometric tracking on the sideline.
Well, that makes so much sense. If the politicians don't get it, it doesn't get funded.
Exactly. And an everyday citizen needs to understand the profound human cost of the emergency response system they rely on, so they can advocate for the resources required to sustain it.
It takes this highly specialized, highly technical concept of emergency scene rehabilitation and roots it firmly in a universal human obligation.
Perfectly said.
You know, you don't have to possess the physical capability to drag a hose line into a 1,000-degree hallway to be a vital part of the mechanism that keeps that responder alive.
No, you don't.
Just by understanding the necessity of that circuit breaker, the intertwined reality of physical cooling, cognitive resetting, and operational readiness, you become an advocate for that healthier, stronger future.
And we cannot overstate how urgently that advocacy is required.
Because things are getting worse out there.
Much worse. The operational environment is only going to get more extreme. The fires are burning hotter, the hazardous materials are more complex, and the cumulative mental toll of emergency response is finally being documented with terrifying clarity.
It's a heavy burden.
It is. The sidelines of these incidents must be fortified with the same intensity and precision as the frontline tactics. And that requires a chorus of informed voices demanding that the unshakable conviction of protection is translated into practical reality on every single emergency scene.
It requires an absolute refusal to let those who carry the heaviest burdens on our behalf simply walk off the damage.
Absolutely.
So let's take a step back and look at the intense, focused journey we've taken through these few concise sentences today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started by dismantling the idea that rehabilitation is just a designated spot to sit down, recognizing instead that it is a complex medical and psychological practice that must constantly be advancing to match the lethality of modern emergencies.
Right, matching the threat level.
Then we broke down the mechanics of the triad, realizing that a responder's physical body and their cognitive circuit breaker are inextricably linked.
You can't treat one without the other.
Exactly. You cannot truly restore their operational readiness if you ignore the profound neurological weight of the scene they just exited.
And we uncovered the dual engine driving this entire mission.
The moral and practical.
Yes. The deeply practical operational goal of ensuring every single responder survives their shift, powered entirely by the unshakable, simple moral conviction that those who willingly step between their community and absolute disaster have unequivocally earned the right to be protected in return.
So what does this all mean? Why does this matter to you even if your daily life never brings you anywhere near the flashing lights of an emergency scene?
It's a fair question.
It matters because this brief document is fundamentally a lesson on the mechanics of community resilience. It reminds us that true safety is never a one-way street. It is a highly collaborative effort.
It takes all of us.
It forces us to look closely at the people we dial 911 for in our most desperate, terrifying moments and ask ourselves, what infrastructure are we building to ensure they can survive the act of saving us?
It's a sobering thought.
It is a realization that even the most resilient heroes require a scientifically optimized sanctuary to repair their armor. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
We really hope it has provided you with a completely new lens through which to view the immense, complex reality of emergency response and a deeper appreciation for the vital, highly technical work that happens just out of the spotlight on the sideline.
The unsung heroes on the sideline.
Exactly. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time today exploring how the text clearly categorizes physical health, mental well-being, and operational readiness as three distinct pillars that must be safeguarded.
Right, the triad.
It makes perfect logical sense when we analyze it here, safely removed from the danger. But consider the reality of a responder actively operating inside a rapidly deteriorating structure, trapped in the absolute heat of a life-or-death emergency.
Where logic kind of goes out the window.
Right. In that singular, volatile moment of crisis, when training merges with pure survival instinct, is there really any boundary between the physical body, the firing synapses of the mind, and the desperate need to complete the mission?
That's a profound question.
Or do those three pillars instantly fuse into one indivisible state of human endurance? And if the body, mind, and mission truly become one entity in the fire, well, how much precision, care, and profound empathy is required from the rest of us to ever truly untangle them when they return to the sideline? Think about that the next time you hear a siren fading into the distance. Until next time.